Welcome to iDateMedia.com. This is Michael Allen, and this is episode 7. In this episode, we will have a conversation with Michael Carter, founder and CEO of PassionsNetwork.com, home to over 260 niche market dating sites, including Large Passions and Trucker Passions. Let's get into it. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and why you started Passions Network?
Well, let's see. Prior to Passions Network, I had created an online dating directory we're going way back now, back to 2002. And the site was, or is, agreaterdate.com. And this was back in the early days. Online dating was still pretty much kind of frowned on, people were somewhat embarrassed to acknowledge at this point that they had an online dating profile, or that they'd signed up with the company. People, I think it was beginning to change, but it was back in the time when if you were to tell somebody that you had an online dating profile, they might think, "Oh, what's wrong with you that you can't meet people in the real world?" And we've obviously, the script has flipped. I mean, if you don't have an online dating profile these days, it's pretty odd considering the number of options out there. But
right.
Yeah. So anyway, I started a online dating directory. It had about 300 different niche categories, which even back in 2002, there was this evolution of moving away from the mainstream one-size-fits-all, general website to sites beginning to split off into different categories. You saw sites beginning to split off based on religion. JDate was one of the first, I think, for the Jewish community. Gay.com, which is no longer an active dating site, but they obviously, were huge in the for the gay community. And then there was just so many derivatives. As soon as a few began to realize, oh, wait a second, and rather than have one size fits all, we should just focus on a specific community or demographic or niche, so to speak. And so that's what that directory was. It was basically just kind of corralling and categorizing all these different niche topics. And it did really well in Google. Google was an entirely different beast back then.
Right.
And it was number one basically in Google for virtually every niche dating search. To the point, I mean, it was a highly successful site, ridiculously so at the time, just because the whole industry was completely different. But it seemed obvious that Google was not going to deliver people to a directory for searches. That in the long haul, Google would deliver people to the search results would represent the actual sites, not a directory page of sites. So I decided sometime around 2003 or 4 that it made sense for me to have the end destinations for a lot of these different niches, and that's kind of what led to the evolution of the concept of Passions Network. And I partnered with a programmer that I knew, and together we kind of cobbled together the bones of the the network and started with 100 different niches, and subsequently I bought him out and expanded the network to what it is now, which is 260 different niches. But kind of a long answer to your question, but that's basically the evolution of where I started to where I am now.
So, in what year did you approach the 260 sites? Was that early on, or was it halfway through?
Let's see. We launched with 100, and I would say, and that was really the idea. Was it's just going to be 100, period. It was, I think it was, and I'm kind of guessing here. I'm thinking maybe. Well, Passions Network started in 2004. So I'm thinking 2006, 2007 was the first time that I was looking at the code and talking with my developer, and we were basically trying to decide, okay, well, everything has been hard coded for this existing infrastructure. How hard would it be for us to modify things to add a new site? And so we basically just did it as a test to see, really how many things were going to have to be changed in the database and in the code and in the UI, the user interface. And it turns out there was really very little that, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of subjective, I guess, but thinking back, there was very little modification that really needed to be done. And, I don't remember what the 101st site was. It was something silly just because it was a test, but it was so easy to incorporate it into the network that we then focused on tools to make it easier for me to launch sites. And then I started asking members, what sites are you interested in? And I also went out and bought a lot of Passions domains, because once I started adding new sites, I didn't want people to get wind and buy domains and then hold me hostage. If I want,
domain names.
Say again?
Cyber squatting on those domain names.
Exactly. Once I knew that I was going to go past the 100, and the first 100 were picked based on the sites that had already kind of proven themselves in the market, or the demographics that seemed pretty obvious, the different religious categorizations or ethnic categorizations, sexual orientation. But then there were some kind of quirky ones in there too. Trek Passions for the sci-fi community was one of the early kind of, more out there types of sites. Again, thinking back, we're going back more than 15 years at this point, I guess. So yeah, when I started buying the new domains, it was a combination of looking for domains that would be kind of mainstream, but still an obvious category or interest or niche, and then lots of really kind of wild and weird ones like zombie passions. I mean, right. It's a fun concept for a site, but it would be really odd, I think, for somebody to decide, oh, I want to get into online dating, and I'm going to make the focus of my decision making for a romantic partner is going to be whether or not they are also into zombies. So the quirky ones like zombie passions and vampire passions, and I could list probably 15 kind of really weird ones. um, they all kind of add to the network in that people, when they join the network, they join a singular site, but then they can add other sites in the network into their account and jump around to spend time with people that they share some common interest with. So, a site like Zombie Passions being added in there, somebody's primary site might be Native American Passions or Trucker Passions, but then they also absolutely love The Walking Dead, and right. So adding Zombie Passions in gave them an opportunity, or gives them an opportunity, to send out a message, about a specific episode, and it's basically icebreakers. Right. The underlying concept of the whole network has been that it's easier to break the ice if you share something in common. So that's where all the different individual niche communities, kind of open that up and make it a little easier for people. If you're on the trucker site, whether you're actually a truck driver or you were a truck driver, you're interested in it, you work in the trucking industry, but you're not actually a driver, all of those different types of people are on that site. And so it makes it a little easier for people to send a message and not just say, hey, or hi, or what's up. They can actually say something about, truck driving, so.
Did you happen to see an uptick in traffic and member registrations due to the Walking Dead series?
I don't think because of that. If they'd ever done a shout out, I know I would have. I know when the network first launched with the 100, I think it was only a few months in, and I mentioned the Trek Passion site before, which it's not just for Star Trek. It's for Star Wars fans, Battlestar Galactica, Doctor Who. I mean, you name it. Right. Any sci-fi loving person. And I remember, and again, this is, the whole network's changed in its look and feel so much, many times in the last 15, 16 years. But I'd already, turned off the computers for the night. And my habit at the time was to watch Conan O'Brien when he had his original show. And, so I turned everything off, and I turned on Conan, and he was doing his monologue, and he said, yeah, so a group of Star Trek fans have gotten together and created their own dating site. And I immediately, sat up in bed. I was like, oh my God, he's about to say Trek Passions. And as soon as he said that kind of lead in, everybody laughed as if that alone was the joke. But then he continued on to say, they say it's going great now, and any month now they hope a girl will join. And at that point, yeah, it was actually a pretty good joke. And everybody really laughed. And so I jumped out of bed, turned the computers back on, and went into the admin system. And, they say even bad publicity is good publicity. And, this certainly was not bad publicity. It was simply a joke, but it made a lot of people aware of this site in particular. And beyond that, I guess kind of just the concept of niche dating indirectly. But 100 people joined within, I don't know, a minute or two of him having mentioned it. So there's been moments like that I happen to catch personally, but then there's just so many that happen, and I'm not, I'll see a lot of members in the Native American Passion site because some Native American community newspaper happened to mention that there's a free Native American dating site, or there's 260, so it's just hard to pick and choose. I mean, there's been sites focused on vampires that did a thing on vampire passions, and sites focused on body positivity that have done articles on large passions for the BBW community. So to answer your question, I never saw anything specific to The Walking Dead that led to a huge jump, but I have seen it. I mean, with the trucking industry, I mean, different magazines. I've been on. I was on a trucking podcast that I think that spiked traffic to the Trucker Passion site. So yeah, it's kind of hit and miss. There's so many sites and so many different communities and forums out there that it's kind of a constant thing.
Right, and just to let the listeners know, your site is completely free, correct?
It's kind of morphed over time. Basically, the way it works now is when you join into any site in Passions Network, that site, whichever site you join, that site is 100% free, period. And as you go through the registration process, you're, basically, just like any dating site, you're filling out, who you are, where, what you like, all of that. And then the system recommends sites that match your interests, your passions. And I would say out of the 260, about 150 or so of those are still free. So you could add those into your site, or into your account rather, for free, and have, be able to jump around. But about 100 of them now are so large that if you decided you wanted to add one of those in to the account, you'd have to upgrade. But it's not a huge fee. It's a $29.95 lifetime membership. There's no recurring billing on that. It's basically just at that point it opens up the whole network. But when I say it opens up the whole network, it doesn't mean it puts the person into all of the sites. It just opens up the option for them to add any of the sites that they would like, even those sites that have grown so large that they cannot be added for free.
Right.
Hopefully that made sense. It's kind of...
Oh, yeah, it makes total sense.
Okay.
So over the years while working on your sites, were there any major issues that you had to deal with early on or midway through or even now for that matter?
Oh, God, so many. I think one of the myths out there, and it seems to just be an ongoing myth, is that people think, it's so easy to create an online dating site and make millions of dollars. I'm going to do that. Right. It is not. That is not the case. It takes a tremendous amount of work, and things are constantly changing. The methods to drive traffic into your sites are changing. The rules some of the largest issues really were, and it goes back to the network having been created so long ago. It was created hard-coded for desktop computers. This was before the iPhone, which
right.
kind of changed everything. People would, they were using the internet, I guess back then, but for texting on Blackberries and maybe flip phones and things like that, but nobody was using their mobile device to view websites. I mean, data transfer, speed, display, all of those things just were not a thing. So so everything was hard coded for desktops, and so as as technology evolved, we had to make the network mobile friendly, that was a massive undertaking, making it responsive to the size of the screen, so that it knows, oh, wait a second, I have to squeeze all this information that used to fit on somebody's computer. I have to squeeze it down into 320 pixel wide display screen, or
right.
All the different phones have different screen sizes, so you don't even want to do a kind of a hard design for mobile phones because they're all changing. So instead, you try to make it responsive to the actual screen size. Google didn't make a big deal about sites being secure. This might be, I don't know who's listening, but the HTTP address for reaching a website versus the HTTPS, S standing for secure. There's issues that are involved in trying to secure. It's much easier now, but early on, the concept of going from non-secure to secure, was it's not that it was really difficult, but I have 260 sites, and in the early days of going to HTTPS, you were paying, I don't know, $50 to $100 per domain to get that security certificate.
Right.
I luckily didn't have to go down that route. I wasn't really pushed until there was a free option out there that would allow me to encrypt all of my domains simultaneously and for free. So I was really kind of lucky in that regard, but it still involved modifying things. So I would say there's been technological changes that we've had to address with regards to the look and feel of the site. Security issues. There's been a lot of email changes over time as the concept of privacy has been evolving, I guess. So there was originally GDPR, which is, I'm probably getting in the weeds here for some of the people who are listening, but in Europe there's a concept of GDPR, and it means basically you can't email people if you have to give them basically there's a lot of rules that have to do with emailing people. I won't go into the weeds there, but that was just Europe. And then Canada has their own set of rules called the CAN-SPAM Act. And then California has its own set of rules. And, and California is massive. So what California does, a lot of America does. So, having to modify, just kind of to wrap up, the three big ones off the top of my head are just the look and feel of the sites, the user interfaces, for mobile devices, the security aspects, and then email privacy concerns. So those are just a couple. That doesn't even get into, how do you drive traffic to your network? How do you build members?
Right. That's going to be my next question is what type of marketing did you do early on? And what type of marketing are you doing now for the sites?
I've been pretty lucky in that I've never had to do paid advertising. The original dating directory that I had or have still, even though it's such a relic, it's kind of a joke at this point. But having been built in, it was actually built using a tool called Front Page, which most people, yeah, exactly. Most people don't even probably recognize the name, but it's just a tool for creating HTML pages and linking them together and all of that. So it was originally created just like with a tool now that doesn't even exist, and it was just because of that. But regardless of how it was created, I mean, at the time, for whatever reason, Google was spoon feeding it just a tremendous amount of traffic for virtually every category. And so when I added Passions Network, I was in a pretty good position that a lot of people don't find themselves in, because I could add my Passions Network sites into the different categories, and because the Greater Date was seeing so much traffic in virtually every category that people searched for, it was literally number one for, you put in gay dating and boom, there was the category page of a Greater Date. You put it in Jewish dating, Christian dating. I mean, it was just ridiculous, really. So by virtue of that, Passions Network got kind of a booster shot. I don't know exactly how to word it, but it got an influx of traffic that most people don't have the luxury of having. So I almost immediately the network was bringing in enough traffic, and it's been an ad-based revenue model for the most part. I mean, there is the upgrade option that I mentioned earlier, but for the most part, it's ad-based revenue model using AdWords. I'm sorry, AdSense on my side, AdWords for the advertisers, and then also there's a online dating specific ad network that you know of quite well, that you and I had started a couple years back, Niche Ad Network, that only works with the online dating industry, and it's folded in to Passions Network as well to raise revenue. So
and I'll go ahead and give that plug. It is nicheadnetwork.com for anyone listening.
Yeah, thank you. It's still a growing entity. It has a good number of publishers and a good number of advertisers in there, but very focused on making sure that the sites that are in there are strong online dating related publishing sites, and also the advertisers are promoting good, strong sites, that type of thing. But I don't want to go off on a different tangent. Excuse me. The original question was, what am I doing now to try and market the site? Because again, things have changed, and a Greater Date drove a lot of traffic early on. That has changed over time as that site basically became kind of a relic. But Passions Network has solidified itself over time. I mean, being online for 16, going on 17 years now, is, there's a lot of inbound links from specific sites, and because of the way the network was structured, with each site being its own domain, the trucking industry, there's a lot of trucking magazines and trucking forums, so when somebody asks, or if an article is being written about trucker dating sites, there's links and traffic that come from those. there's a lot more competition now because people, kind of wised up to the concept that, there can be a lot of different types of niche sites. So I have a lot more competition than I did early on. That's just the way of the world. So it's kind of there's this flux as Google and Bing change their algorithms and positions change within the search engines. But basically, all of my traffic comes from word of mouth, existing members, organic search engine positioning. I do have a Facebook page for the site, but for the primary site, passionsnetwork.com. But it's more just of a technical page, in the sense, notify people of any really important modifications or things like that. So,
have you seen an increase in traffic from early on this year due to COVID?
I think everybody. I'm guessing everybody in the online dating industry has seen an uptick, just because so many. People have. If they're really paying attention, and they have the ability to, I know some people absolutely have to leave the house just in order to put food on the table, and there's
right.
Everybody's situation is different, and you got to feel for the people that are in really awkward situations. But the vast majority of people have found themselves staying at home more, and aside from streaming a lot of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and you name it, they're spending a lot more time on their computers, and there has definitely been a move towards the short answer to your question is yes. I've seen an increase in traffic, and there's also been more interest. One of the benefits to all of the sites in Passions Network is that there's audio chat and there's webcam chat, and so people have the ability to interact with one another. And we kind of make a joke in one of the ads that's posted on the Facebook page and on Twitter, just that you really need to connect with somebody via webcam. This was before the pandemic, like basically just saying, before you go out to meet someone for drinks, coffee, dinner, whatever it is that you're going to go out for, connect with them via webcam.
Right.
Make sure that the person that you're about to meet doesn't have profile photos that are 10 years old, that they actually,
right.
Or that are completely a different person. There's a whole show called Catfish,
right.
where people trick other people. So we've seen an influx of people, on the sites throughout the network, and we highly recommend that people do. I think it's kind of known that a lot of people are spending more time doing video dating,
right?
Or if not full-on video dating, they're opening up the camera option, and they're connecting to make sure that the person that they're interacting with is a real person. So and that they look like what they represent in their profile. So yeah.
Do you have any tips for anyone listening that might be thinking about starting a dating site?
Oh, wow. I'm really biased. My original directory was broken out by niche, going back 18, 19 years now. So, within a couple years of that, I started Passions Network, which is highly niche. I guess that would be the first thing, and to me, it just kind of is common sense. I mean, if you think you're going to launch a generic dating site and fight your way through, I mean, the online dating is one of the more competitive industries online.
Right.
You know, I don't know the list, but it's got to be in the top 10 easy. And if you think you're going to get out there and, you know, what you want is to be on the first page of Google search results, and not just the first page. You want to try and be in the top 3, 4, 5 if possible. And if you create a generic dating site, I think you're swimming upstream. I mean, there's so many out there that it's hard to really set yourself apart. So I guess the primary piece of advice, and again, this is coming from somebody who's hugely biased from, 18, 19 years, I don't know, of work in this industry, is to focus in on a niche and pick one that you really like, because it takes a lot. I mean, people underestimate what is involved in setting up a site, and I mean, setting up is just the first step of many steps, and so you really have to like the concept of the dating site, and again, I would steer away from generic.
Unless you have millions of dollars for advertising.
Yeah, yeah, and even then, I think those millions of dollars will just go out the window over time. There's been so many times. I early on, I used to freak out when I would see these, new dating sites come on, or and then the social network concept kind of evolved. That wasn't even a thing when my network, when Passions Network launched. But I would see these dating sites or social networks that were similar in concept, and I would, or I would hear about Google was going to launch something, or Facebook was going to launch dating, and there were. But by the time Facebook decided that they were going to launch dating, I would become so numbed. I'd seen so many really large companies, well funded, like you said, many millions of dollars. I mean, they're doing advertising on television and everything, and they like a firework. I mean, you see this big burst of excitement and bright lights and energy, and then it just fades away. And there's just a graveyard littered of so many online dating sites, from small to large. So
that's absolutely true. Somebody that I was just speaking with, and that I've met at iDate a few times, they go by the name of Spark Starter, and it was for a generic dating site for general dating, and they pumped millions of dollars into this. It's defunct now. If you go to their website, the website domain is for sale. So even if you have millions of dollars, trying to create a popular dating site is, like you said, swimming upstream. It's a uphill battle, and like you said, start a niche. That's something that I recommend as well.
Yeah, it's a strong way to. You're still gonna have a battle, by the way. I mean, even picking a niche, but it does give you a foothold. I mean, if you think back, I mean, most of the people listening to this podcast probably won't have ever heard of True.com, but they were massive. American Singles was massive. Yahoo Personals.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, those three. I mean, if Yahoo can't, launch and maintain and continue a mainstream dating site, well, I mean, that they should have been able to. I don't know what went wrong there, but I mean, they should have been one of the ones that could have continued. But I think even Matchmaker, which was big, I don't think they're around anymore. But so anyway, not to belabor the point that there's a lot of big ones that have come and gone. That my advice would be to pick a niche and have it be one that is that you're passionate about, because you're going to be involved in so many decisions: the name of the site, the design of the site, the logo, the banners, because you want people to have ways to link into you, and you want to have a page on the site that gives them tools to link into you. And so you're going to be involved in helping to figure out what does it look like, and the more creative you can be, the better. Those are just the basics, and then you have to do a lot of outside stuff. I mean, you have to have a Facebook page, you have to do Twitter, if you can blog, depending on how the site that you set up is set up, whether or not you have a way to do a blog. What you and I are doing right now, podcasts, which ultimately will be on YouTube. YouTube, I think, is coming into its own. I mean, not that it's a new thing, obviously, but I think people are beginning to realize that YouTube can be used more for marketing. And Google is also pushing YouTube a lot more now in their search results than they did. It's been an ongoing kind of evolution, but I think about 2, 3, 4 years ago, they really started to incorporate the YouTube videos into the search results when people were searching for things. So creating videos that are very compelling. I could just go on for an hour on different recommendations.
Right. Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this podcast. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about Passions Network. And we wish you continued success with the network.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you.
This is Michael with iDateMedia.com, and we'll see you next time.